Maxxis is the leading brand in mountain bike tires, and they have several amazing options for front tires.
Some of the most popular ones are the Assegai, Minion DHF, Minion DHR, and the Shorty.
But what's different about these tires, and which is best for you?
In this video, we're going to compare how these 4 tires ride and decide which one is best for you.
What's up guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Russ.
And I have ridden the Assegai and the Minion DHF on the front of my bikes.
And I've ridden all of these on the front of my bike.
And before we get into comparing all of these tires to one another, let's just do a quick overview. The Maxxis Assegai is the new kid on the block in the Maxxis lineup, but has quickly become the most popular front tire choice. Maxxis says it's designed for loose over hardpack, medium hardpack, loose and wet conditions, with great rolling efficiency and excellent cornering control. The center knobs are designed to roll fast with lots of braking traction, and the side knobs are tall and blocky for tons of cornering bite. Then, there's a small knob in between the inner and outer knobs, which makes for a smooth transition while cornering. I would say that Maxxis is pretty darn right. Note that I did not say that they say it's good for mud. It's not a mud tire. It works okay in mud.
But it's probably my favorite all-arounder.
Me too. It's actually going to be hard to go this whole video without just ranting and raving about how great the Assegai is.
But I think before that, you kind of have to talk about the Minion DHF, because it's been the industry standard for such a long time, and it is such a great tire.
Absolutely. More on the Minion DHF in a second, but this Assegai, ever since it came out, it went right on the front of my bike because it was like the new cool front tire, and it has not come off. And now it's been, what, 2 years now? 2.5 years? I don't know.
That.
And I love it. It corners well. It steers you in the direction you want to go, and when you pull on the brakes, it slows you down. I love that transition knob in between the center and the outer knob. I don't feel like I'm riding on edges, and I really feel like I can just fine-tune how I'm leaning my bike, and it just goes where I want to go.
I agree. Late spring all the way into the fall here, it's my favorite front tire. It's versatile. It also, I agree with you on the transition knobs, where the Minion does a good job centered and on edge. There is that spot on it where it gets a little bit loose in transition, where the Assegai is solid all the way from vertical to completely tipped over in a turn. For me personally, it's just replaced the Minion DHF in my lineup, and probably the best front tire that I've ridden all around in most conditions.
I hate to say it, but I feel like the word replacement also comes into my head when I'm thinking about the DHF and the Assegai, but the Minion DHF is still an amazing tire. Here's more on that one. The Maxxis Minion DHF has been around since the beginning of time. I think it's outlasted dinosaurs. Maxxis says it's designed for loose over hardpack, medium hardpack, loose and slightly wet conditions, with great rolling efficiency and excellent cornering control. The directional ramped center knobs provide low rolling resistance, and the side knobs are big and blocky, which bite hard while cornering due to the center channel between inner and outer knobs. Minion DHF, it's been around forever.
Yep.
I loved it for a long time. It's a great tire.
Favorite tire for a good 15 years.
It rolls pretty good. It works great on the front. I've used it on the rear as well. Very common OEM tire, probably the most popular tire ever used on mountain bikes on trails.
Probably.
It brakes good, it corners good, it does everything pretty good, but I wouldn't say it does anything super well, but it is a great all-arounder.
Yeah, and I think with most just jack of all trades kind of tires, you're gonna sacrifice at the extremes, and the Minion's no different. It's probably the easiest choice all around for a lot of people up until lately.
Like he said, doesn't do excellent in wet, doesn't do excellent in super scrabbly deep dust, but you know, it does pretty good, especially if you were to just be like, I'm gonna run one tire on the front and rear for the rest of my life. DHF would make you pretty happy for the rest of your life. So we've got Minion DHF, now we're gonna go to Minion DHR for rear.
Yeah.
But it actually works good in the front. The Maxxis Minion DHR II is designed as primarily a rear tire, but works pretty dang well on the front as well. Maxxis says that this tire is designed for loose over hardpack, medium hardpack, loose and slightly wet conditions, and has great rolling efficiency and excellent cornering traction. The center knobs are ramped and paddle shaped for great climbing and braking traction, and the side knobs and channel are nearly the same as the Minion DHF for lots of cornering bite. First off, I've really never run a DHR2 on the front. Russ has, but I really like it in the rear. And watch out, there's a link over your head. The link above Russ's head is another video that we did where we were It's another video that we did comparing rear tires from Maxxis, and the DHR2 is a spotlight tire in that video, so check that out.
Yeah.
So how do you like it on the front?
As a front, in the right conditions, it's great. If you're running it in hard pack or loose over hard pack, basically anything that's not soft conditions, it runs really well. It runs fast. It's got a ton of grip. Where it would be lacking and where you might not want to run it is if you have like super powdery conditions, or if you're in the wet and it's soft. It maybe lacks a little bite, but it has grip.
Yeah.
Would be the best way to describe it.
Makes sense to me. And kind of like the DHF, it makes a good tire that you can stick on the front and rear, and then you can just cycle it for when the rear tire wears out, put the front and the back, and then get a new front tire and just keep it moving. Now to a tire that is actually really not similar to these other tires at all, but it's a great tire, especially in the right conditions, and that's the Maxxis Shorty. The Maxxis Shorty has been around for a while, but was just recently redesigned. Maxxis says it's designed for loose, wet, and muddy conditions, with low rolling efficiency, but excellent cornering control. This is more of a spike style tire with large square center knobs and large square side knobs, all spaced far apart for the purpose of clearing mud. It's kind of a mud spike tire.
Yeah, I would say, for me anyways, Northwest, 5 months out of the year, it's probably my favorite front tire. It's not a true mud spike in the sense that it's not gonna penetrate as far as some of those true mud spikes and get a little wobbly on the roots and the rocks. It's kind of that in-betweener soft conditions tire. So it does well if you got roots, if you got rocks, some hard pack in between the mud. It still runs pretty good and doesn't squirm around too much. So it's a great, intermediate to loose conditions tire.
Absolutely, and in comparison, when he was talking about it's not really a true mud spike, let's show the WTB Verdict Wet. That's a freaking mud spike.
Yeah.
That's got claws. That is a jaguar on the front of your bike clawing into the rainforest floor.
Yeah, but you lose out when you get on some roots and rocks, and then it squirms around a little bit. So not as versatile, but very condition specific and incredible in the right conditions.
Absolutely. All right, now that we've done an overview and told you a little bit of something about all four of these tires, what do you say?
Let's compare them.
First comparison, and for sure the hardest one for us to do, is the Maxxis Assegai versus Minion DHF. Both great up front. The DHF has been around since the dawn of time, and it's been an amazing tire for so long. It's very common to be imitated or cloned by other tire companies for good reason. It just works really good. It's got traction and it turns, but doesn't necessarily do anything super amazing. That's where I feel like the Assegai came into play when this thing was designed.
Yeah, I think when they engineered it, part of the program might have been to just see if they could do a better front. Maybe.
Out Minion the Minion?
Possibly. I think they did it.
They got my vote. Yeah, for sure. All right, so I've ran both of these tires. You've run both of these tires for sure. You've probably been running this tire since
1920s at least.
1920s. You're not that old, Russ. So for me, the Assegai came out in 2019-ish, and it was the hot, new, cool front tire. I put it on my bike, it hasn't come off. I don't plan on changing it back to the DHF anytime soon, unfortunately. And I do feel like it kind of replaced the DHF.
For me, it definitely did. I run it all spring, summer, fall. It's my go-to front for almost every condition.
And it works okay in mud. It's not a mud spike, but it works okay. But this thing really excels in the dry seasons, like right now in summer. I just love this tire. It's so good, and 100% the best thing about the Assegai, which comes from us and customers, is the predictability. It's super predictable. You have this on the front of your bike, you are planted, and you have lots of traction in the center knobs, and you have lots of traction on those tall, blocky side knobs for when you're turning, but also that transition knob, it works really well.
Yeah, and I think it kind of gives you a better feel for me of when it's gonna get loose or let go a little bit. Whereas the Minion, I think without having those transition knobs in there, it may feel like it has a little bit more bite, but when it does let go, it happens a little quicker and a little bit more abruptly.
Absolutely, and sometimes I do feel with certain tires that have just a center tread and an outer tread with a channel, I feel like it's either on the center knobs or on the side knobs. With the Assegai, it's like little adjustments, and it helps me ride a bit more confidently, especially when it's dry. Those little knobs are grabbing everything and super predictable. I always know what it's gonna do.
100% agree.
And real quick, we wanted to say, the DHF is not a bad tire. It's stock on many bikes. We don't want you thinking that you have some garbage tire that is not good on your bike.
That's a fantastic tire.
It's a fantastic tire. It's just the Assegai just works that much better to the point where both of us don't see ourselves turning back.
Yeah, at least for us and our terrain.
All right, final bullet points for this tire comparison. First off, how they ride in the dry. We kind of already talked about that. The Assegai excels in dry conditions. We'd highly recommend it for dry terrain. I really like this in the summer. I like it all around, but mainly the summer, mainly because of its predictability with those transition knobs in between the center and the outer. You just know what it's gonna do, and that helps me ride more confident when it's dry, dusty, slidey, and marbly. And then what about the wet?
I think in the wet, I'm still gonna choose the Assegai. It sheds slightly better than a DHF, although it's not a mud tire. But there is something to be said about the channels in the DHF and that you kind of have that edgy feel to it. Like I said, I'm gonna choose the Assegai, but both of them are gonna be pretty close.
When it comes to rolling speed, they're front tires. It's really hard to tell the difference in rolling speed between tires. A lot of what that's gonna come down to too is the rubber compound that you choose. If you choose the Max Grip like we prefer, it's gonna be more sticky, roll a little bit slower, but if you get the Max Terra, then it's going to roll a little faster.
Yeah, it'll last a little bit longer, but it is a front tire, so I don't really see wear being as big of an issue on the front as it is in the rear.
Yeah, our focus is just on grip, not really focusing on wear or rolling speed.
Definitely.
Just want your bike to slow down. All right, so which one of these tires is better for a certain rider? It's gonna be hard because I'm probably gonna say that the Assegai is probably just a better choice for everybody.
I think so, and we're both gonna lean towards the Assegai for all around. But I'm sure there's some terrain out there and certain conditions that the DHF might be slightly better for some people. Maybe in a softer condition you can get more edge on the DHF, but
Splitting hairs.
And I think we're still just gonna pick the Assegai.
So all in all, I think that we're gonna recommend the Assegai to pretty much everybody, but I would recommend the DHF to you if you've been running the DHF since you were 5 years old and it is second nature to your brain on how it works. And if you put the Assegai on and you just don't like it as much as the DHF, then just stick with the DHF. Otherwise, Assegai all the way, baby.
Yep.
All right, well, that was kind of long, but the next ones are not gonna be as long because they're a little bit more weather dependent. So next up, we're just gonna straight up compare the Minion DHF to the Minion DHR II. So yeah, it's a little bit more weather dependent. You just heard us ramble for 6 minutes or so about the DHF and what it's capable of. The DHR II, like we were saying earlier, it's very commonly used in the rear, but a lot of people do like it on the front. And some bike companies like Santa Cruz actually run these as an OEM front tire. And you have spent some time with this in the front of your bike. I mean, what do you think comparing these two?
Yeah, I first rode it actually on a Santa Cruz and it really surprised me. Anything that's dry or marbly, loose over hard pack kind of conditions.
Smells all right.
It smells good and it works good.
Yeah.
I was surprised in those conditions. I wouldn't run it when it starts to get wet outside. But in those dry, hard pack conditions, there's a lot of rubber being put into the ground and it works exceptionally well.
So if you ride in a dry climate, which one of these would you prefer or recommend?
If it's dry, I think I would pick the DHR.
Okay. And what about if it's wet? Not muddy, but just wet.
In the wet conditions, hands down DHF. It's going to bite in on edge slightly better than what the DHR does, and just kind of all around be more predictable in anything. If it starts to get greasy at all, as far as a front tire goes, you kind of need a little bit of a channel to hook up on those side knobs, and those are the conditions where I would start to just shy away from the DHR.
And goes to say, if you have the DHF in the front, you're probably gonna have a DHR in the rear. So.
And even in those wetter conditions on the rear, I don't notice that that hookup or the lack of hookup in the wet like you do as a front tire. And so I would just leave it on the back and run a DHF on the front.
And when it comes to how well one of them holds up versus the other, they are so similar in tread. Again, this same thing is going to apply to all these comparisons. It really just depends on which rubber compound you choose.
Yeah, so I think if you ride in dry, hard pack conditions as a front tire, I think the DHR is the way to go. And if it's intermediate to loose, then I think the DHF is definitely the better way to go.
All right, now that we're done with the Minion comparison, let's knock one of these off.
I wanted to knock it off.
Oh, here, let's do it again. Now that we've compared the Minion brothers or sisters, let's knock one of these off the table. That was too hard.
That was too hard.
And let's now compare the Minion DHR II versus the Assegai. Again, I mean, it's going to be really weather dependent. Like, you really like the DHR II up front if it's like that really kind of weird marbly dry.
Yeah, but in this case, I think I'm going to pick the Assegai.
Just because it's that good.
In every condition as a front tire over the DHR.
That makes sense.
For me personally.
So if you had a bike that had, if you had a DHR II on the front of your bike stock, would you be putting that in the back and then putting an Assegai up front?
I mean, I run through a lot of tires, so yeah, I probably would. If your bike comes with a DHR and you have the right conditions for it, I wouldn't necessarily think that you would have to take it off immediately and run this, but when the tire wears out, certainly I'm gonna choose the Assegai.
Yeah, so it's a better option for the front tire, but it's not so much better that you have to just rip this off.
No.
And not ride your bike.
No, like we've said, the DHR is a great front tire in the right conditions, but for me and the terrain we have, the Assegai is a better choice all around.
All right, and let's just do those direct comparisons. I mean, which one is going to be your choice in the dry? It sounds like Assegai.
Assegai.
Which one's going to be your choice in the wet?
Assegai.
Assegai. And rolling speed, their front tires, I mean,
maybe the DHR might edge it out in rolling speed.
Just because it has less knobs?
It also might be because I've only ridden it in the hard pack and been happy with it in the hard pack. And those are the conditions where you go the fastest. So it could have been that, it could have been the tire. It's hard to tell.
It's a tough comparison. I mean, front tires in general. And then in regards to how long they last, same thing from the other ones. Depends on your rubber compound. And then which is better for what rider, would you say, Russ?
In my experience, as a front tire, I would still, again, pick the Assegai.
I knew you were going to say that.
Any rider, any of the conditions. Yep, that's what I'm going with.
It's really good.
It is.
It's hard to knock it.
So let's talk about Shorty.
Let's talk about Shorty. All right, for this last comparison, it's going to be Shorty versus the other three tires. It's very weather dependent. You use this in the deepest of dust or the deepest of mud, and that's what you're going to be doing with. I mean, it's the extremity tire. It's when it's real sloppy or so dry that you can, record a fake moon landing.
Well, and it's my favorite winter tire.
And around here in Bellingham, it's kind of winter like 3/4 of the year.
Yeah.
So how would you say that this tire actually does though in the dry? Like if you were to be a person that wants a tire that just bites really hard, a lot of people might see this and say, oh man, that's got the biggest knobs. I want the biggest knobs for the most grip. That's not the right way to think, right?
No, it's tall, but the knobs aren't really wide, so you're not putting a lot of rubber onto the ground like you would be with an Assegai, but they're a little bit taller and a little bit narrow, so they penetrate the ground a little bit better. So if it's either really dusty or wet outside, then it'll penetrate, grab a hold of stuff, and get lots of grip.
Absolutely. All right, I don't really think that it's worth directly comparing this to any tire here. It's so dependent on conditions, but let's just compare it to the most popular front tire right now, which is the Assegai. A lot of people are gonna have the Assegai on their bike, and when the winter comes around, they're gonna be thinking about switching to the Shorty. I would recommend it if you want the most grip when it's wet.
Yeah, if you're riding strictly well-maintained trails year-round, then I think the Assegai is great as a year-round tire. In the Northwest, and we're riding a lot of steep stuff year-round, I'd always switch to the Shorty in the wintertime. It grips into the mud better. It sheds mud a lot better. And just a good choice for those winter months.
And when we do say shed mud better, there's probably a lot of viewers that live in a drier climate where they don't really see mud, just like a lot of people don't see snow, unfortunately.
Yep.
But for those people, when we're talking about shedding mud, let's just say you go and you shuttle, and at the end of the ride, everyone puts their bikes into the back of the truck.
Yep.
You're gonna notice that the front tires hanging out of the back of the bed, the ones that don't shed mud well, they are full of mud. You cannot see the tread. You cannot determine which tire it is from the tread pattern because you can't see it. It's completely packed with mud. However, the mud spikes are going to be completely clear or mostly clear of mud, and you're going to say, oh boy, my tire is so full of mud, I got to go on the lostco.com and get one of them shorties. Or you might not say that, and you're just totally fine with it. So I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Shorty winter, Assegai summer, that's my combo.
Assegai though, if you just want to run one tire and you don't want to have to buy tires, it works in the mud.
Yep.
Just not as good as the Shorty. It's a good all-around tire.
Yeah, a lot of the local Galbraith riders just want one tire to do year round. I always point them towards there. And if somebody wants a great summer and a great winter, then it's summer and winter.
Makes sense to me. All right, well, what do you think, Russ? Is that about it?
That's about it.
Oh, I'm getting thirsty because we've been talking about tires for quite some time. Sorry, Alex, this might be a long video to edit. Anyways, if you need a front tire for your bike or a rear tire for your bike or 3 tires for your tricycle, head over to thelostco.com where we've got a whole lot of tires in stock with free shipping on all USA orders over
$49.
And if you have any questions, email us at sales@thelostco.com or call us at 360-306-8827. Until next time, later.